You got swimmers, you've got hockey, you've got baseball, you've got all. They don't want to do that.
Nancy? Ask person to put the current one up on your desktop like they do for me.
Right.
The July 11th meeting of Eden Prairie City Council will now come to order. I'll rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Prior to the start of each council meeting, we provide an opportunity for Eden Prairie residents to address the council on issues related to Eden Prairie city government. This portion of the meeting is generally from about 6:30 to 6:55 here in the council chambers. If you wish to speak at that time, please contact the city manager's office at 949-8412 by noon of the meeting date with your name, your phone number, and the subject matter you wish to discuss. If time permits, after scheduled speakers, we had 2 scheduled speakers today if you were here, we will have an opportunity for people to get up spontaneously from the audience to address us. These portions of the meeting are not recorded or televised. Again, if you have any questions, contact the city manager's office. We have a number of wonderful donations that have come in to the city, and most of them, all of them, are in the Park and Rec realm. So, Mr. Lothammer, do you want to get going on those?
Yes, Your Honor. Council members, take you back to 2009 when we were a city who had a large telescope under a tarp and no way to use it. And as we looked at how we could pull that project together, we were very fortunate to get to know Doug and Carolyn Coors, who are with us here tonight. And they came forward and wanted to help us with the funding of our observatory. And as you know, that has won architectural awards, and it's now been home to thousands of people to come to see many of the stargazing events and opportunities that we have had in place. At the time I was describing this telescope to people is imagine your water heater at home. That's the size of it. Only it takes a lift that you would use to take an engine block out of a car in order to move it. And so very substantial. And what we found, although it's a great telescope, it's not as efficient as it could be in terms of being able to be computerized and move and stay in focus. And that's really important as we have sometimes 30 to 40 people at one time looking at our flat screen TV or through the eyepiece to see some of the planets or the stars. And so as we started exploring what is the even better way that we can operate our programs, Mr. Coors and Mrs. Coors again have come back into play and have agreed to fund a new telescope to replace the old one. And this one is computerized and is very easy to find the planets. It's also much lighter weight, so it doesn't involve tons of counterbalances and almost a whole gymnastics routine in order to be able to move the telescope. This will be much more efficient and much more effective for our teaching purposes. So tonight, Mr. and Mrs. Coors are here, and I'd like to invite them to come forward. And then after they've given a history and their reasons for the donation, I'd also like to have a picture with the mayor as well.
Mr. and Mrs. Coors?
She doesn't want to come up with it.
She's coming.
She's hesitating. I'm making her come. So thank you, Jay. I'll try and keep it brief, but I wanted to give you a little history of how this whole thing came about. Carolyn and I are both scientists by training. We're both engineers. We have some kids now since we made the initial donation 7 years ago that are also have graduated, are engineers as well. But our passion is science, and we're supporting the sciences. We have a passion for nature, as Stan knows as well, and we're also very involved in the state in around the whole issue of hunger. So we have a lot of passion about a lot of things. But first and foremost, the observatory and the telescope is really important to us. And I'll tell you one quick story is, after we made the initial donation, a couple years went by, and I was at an auction. And I went to this auction because they were selling a telescope that was very similar to the one that you guys had. Only this telescope was from 1968. I think the one that you have now is from 1975. But I can tell you how difficult it is to use. So I have that telescope. It's heavy. You have to move it. It's not computerized. And so I feel the pain that's going on there. And when Jay and Stan reached out to us and said, can you help us with a new telescope, we didn't even think about it. We just said, we're in. So thank you for the opportunity, Mayor and council members. And we're happy to upgrade things and continue to contribute.
Thank you so much for this donation. It's a real plum for our community, and I hope you realize how much we enjoy it. And you're not even Eden Prairie residents, are you?
No, we actually live in downtown Minneapolis.
Yeah, so we really appreciate it. Yeah.
So.
But we're big fans of the Nature Center, and it's just terrific that your city does such a great job from bringing nature and science to children and families. And our son actually does live in Eden Prairie now, right near Telescope, but that wasn't really with the donation.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. We need a motion. I'll go down for the pictures. Will you take over?
Sure. So if I'm taking over, I'll have someone else make the motion. I would entertain someone to make the motion.
Move to accept the donation from Doug and Carolyn Kors in the amount of $18,000 for the purchase of a new telescope at the Starring Lake Outdoor Center Observatory.
Is there a second?
Second.
I think I should probably wait to take the vote. Let her do it.
Okay.
I know I have looked through the telescope myself, and it's a wonderful facility, so thank you so much for your donation. It's been a great pleasure to have it in Eden Prairie, so, and thanks for the upgrade. I know it'll make things a lot easier to track.
All right,
Thank you.
Nancy, we need to take the vote, so if you want to just, everything's done, just all those in favor. You go ahead. Aye. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Take it away. Go ahead.
Your Honor, council members, in my continuing goal to make the mayor uncomfortable, I haven't taken her paddleboarding this year. We haven't had her do a first serve yet this year, so I thought I would start with wildlife and an owl. We at the Outdoor Center have had the opportunity to come about being the home and caregiver for a barred owl. And this barred owl's been with us now for several months. We'll have Stan Tikla from our Outdoor Center bring it forward.
Oh, my.
And this is Whisper, the barred owl. And Whisper makes its home at the Outdoor Center, where a scout project actually built Whisper's home. And this was one of our more popular social engagement activities. In fact, a lot of people responded with names for the owl, and Whisper is what was settled upon because of how quietly owls are in flight. And so Stan and the staff at the Outdoor Center use Whisper for times like this, but also to engage kids and others in nature. And Whisper is even more popular than Stan and the other instructors. So in the short time we've had Whisper, the amount of engagement that has been obtained is really phenomenal, and the interest that this gives the kids. The other piece to note, Whisper, although tried to fly a little bit, came to us because Whisper has two breaks in one of his legs and is not able to fly or survive in the wild. And so he's able to be at our home and give great interpretation. There's also at least another barred owl around the Outdoor Center that does live in the wild that we hear and see from time to time too. So it's something that lends itself to good interpretation and is something that is right here in Eden Prairie that people can see in the wild, as well as hear from Stan and others at our outdoor center. So we wanted to take this opportunity to bring Whisper forward tonight so that you could know about him and hear about him, and then also invite you to stop by the outdoor center to see Whisper's home at any time.
Thank you, Stan, for bringing the owl in. Is this the one that there was the naming contest
Yes.
for? Okay.
Yes.
That's kind of a dangerous thing to do these days. My kids were wondering if Owlie McOwlface was one of the nominations for the name. Did that come in?
We did hear that one, yes. Yep.
Yeah.
It wasn't a top vote getter.
No, I'm sure it wasn't. I'm sure it wasn't. All right, no resolution is needed here. So next is another donation.
Yes, so we have the opportunity tonight, a group from Team Fox Jets is here, and to present us with an additional $30,000
Wait.
towards the pool.
Mr. Poey.
I am sorry, I skipped ahead. One more, in the proper order. This item is a sculpture that will go at the community center. And Richards Poey is with us here tonight, and we have been fortunate to be selected by him as the home for one of his very fabulous sculptures. And what makes it even better for us is him and his wife make their home here in Eden Prairie and visit the community center several days a week. We'll give you lots of credit for all of your workout visits. But so we're going to put up on the screen, maybe if I can ask Lindsay to grab the PowerPoint, we'll give you a rendering of what it looks like, because it is large and heavy, so difficult to transport in, but we're going to hopefully be able to show you what that photo looks like. And I'm going to invite Mr. Poey to come forward, because I think it's important for you to hear from him what really derived this particular sculpture and why he selected the community center for it to be placed at.
Thank you very much, Jay. Is this on? I do want to thank you for inviting me to the council meeting tonight, and I'm pleased not to ask you for money. I am pleased to thank you for the community center and everything that has meant to me and my wife for the last, since 1992. I'm a New Yorker by birth, and I've been involved with art for all my life. I worked for Eastman Kodak in an art kind of position, and I came to Honeywell in 1969 and did the same kinds of things. And I retired in the summer of '97, and immediately started a new career in sculpture. And I'd never done that before. And so I loved it so much that it became almost a full-time job. And anyway, I have just retired, officially retired from my second career. And we live right off of 62 and Purgatory Creek in the Timber Creek townhouse development. And have lived there since '92 and love it. And at any rate, Heidi and I, my wife Heidi and I, go to the community center all the time, and it was a delight to escape from the much more expensive for-profit clubs that we used to belong to, and it's got everything we need. So it's been an absolute wonder. So I would, at this point in my career, I would like to take the opportunity to donate this sculpture to you. It's called Like a Tree, Rooted in the Earth, and it depicts probably the most famous yoga pose, the tree pose, which Lindsay probably could do, but I can't. At any rate, it's a very strong, popular pose, and it depicts clarity of mind and awareness, and how an individual becomes solidly rooted in the earth. As you can see, she's standing on a globe of the earth, and actually it is a three-dimensional depiction of our earth. It's 4 feet high, it's made of bronze, and was made in 2005. The first one was made in 2005. It's an edition of 6. This is number 4. It will be the last because I have broken the molds. What else might I say? I do have some, I was happy to say that somebody pronounced my name correctly. My first name is Richards, oddly enough, is my mother's maiden name, and has haunted me all my life. Nobody realizes that you can have a first name like this with an S at the end. At any rate, I do have a couple of pieces of literature that might show some of the other work that I have done. I was vice president and of the Society of Minnesota Sculptors for 13 years, and did their newsletter every quarter. It was like an 8-page newsletter in color, and I did the photography, the writing, the production, and the distribute. So it's been a lot of fun. So I finally gave that up as like to have a life of my own. So now I'm basically retired from art, but it's still deep in my heart. And anyway, I'd like to thank the city of Eden Prairie for having such a wonderful thing for their residents. And I hope you will accept the gift. Yes. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
How long did it take you to do that sculpture initially?
It was probably in the area of 3 to 4 months.
Wow.
And I did it out at the Minnetonka Art Center. Yes, I know, but they don't do sculpture. At any rate, I worked with some wonderful people out there and learned how to do the whole process from the ground all the way up. And in my later part of my career, I gave up doing a lot of the casting and the mold making myself and the patinas. So it's a very time-consuming 7 or 8 step process to get from a hunk of clay to a hunk of bronze. Anyway, I hope you will enjoy it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful piece. Thank you
is.
for donating it.
Beautiful.
Mr. Lotthammer and I had the pleasure of going to the Poe's home before the 4th of July to take a look at this piece before it was going to be coming to the council tonight. And he and his wife are both extremely talented. She's a painter. He does sculpture, not just bronze like this, but you also do stone sculpture, and they're just outstanding pieces. I've read about you and your wife, seen things that you've done in the community for years and years. And what a great tribute for after 25 years in the community for your donation of this piece. It's going to mean a lot to all of us.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you. That's right. Thanks for coming tonight.
I would move to accept the donation of a sculpture like a tree rooted in the earth by artist Richards Poe.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes. The next item is a donation from Foxjets. Mr. Lotthammer?
Yes, Your Honor. This is a group representing Team Foxjets that will be coming forward to announce the gift tonight, but they originally had made a gift and a pledge, and they are adding to that another $30,000 to be paid in $15,000 increments. I want to point out that, and maybe as they come forward, I can point out that this is a group that's been with us for a long time, and in our community has been a premier group in really taking swimming and aquatics to the next level. And not long ago, as we embarked on the pool project, they were a group that assisted us in the planning, and even now as we keep continuing to move forward and make some refinement, and they are really a partner to us. And so we really appreciate all the work that Team Fox Jets has done, not just to help raise funds, but also to make the project possible and to make it really the best possible project for the community too. I think in a lot of cases, sometimes specialized teams can try to really focus in on only what's good for them, but this has been a group of people who have also looked broader and said, what's good for the community and how can we make this the best for the community so that it works for all levels and all ages as well. And I've really felt that level of partnership from them and have appreciated that. So with that, I'll let Brandon take the floor and introduce the others as well.
Thanks very much, Jay. So with me, I have members of our board, Kara Skog, Micah Roberts, and Dave. And our head coach, Coach Lloyd Larson, Dave Link. Sorry about that. Last names. I love public speaking. It's one of my greatest privileges to be able to do. So we're pleased on behalf of the board, of all of the parents, of the coaching staff, and the over 300 team members of Team Fox Jet, most of whom are Eden Prairie residents, to be able to provide this additional funding to kind of come close to closing out our fundraising effort. We'd really like to thank all of the parents, team members, all of those people that over the course of our fundraising campaign have made the contributions we've been able to make possible, particularly the Gallagher family and their very generous donation toward this project, and the Davis family as well, both for their financial contributions as well as guidance and assistance through our fundraising campaign. So very special thanks to all of them. What the pool has meant for us in terms of results, 10% year-over-year growth for us. This spring, we enjoyed some great results at some national championships with a number of top 8 swims for our swimmers. And the facility's an asset to the community as well. Last time I spoke to you about a year ago, without forgetting anybody's name, who I know very well, I mentioned that we were able to do the Minnesota Achievement Championships last summer. This year I'm really excited to announce that this spring we will be doing the senior state meet at the community center, and we'll have several hundred of the best swimmers in Minnesota at the facility, and this puts us in a class where Rochester and the University of Minnesota exist. So to be able to hold a meet like that in our community is a fantastic opportunity. So thank you very much for your time, and thanks.
Well, thank you very much for your donations to this facility. Fox Jets has always been an exceptional, nationally ranked, wonderful swim team, and now we finally have you swimming in a center that matches the capabilities of your team, so I'm delighted for that. Also, just your efforts to design and strategize for how the pools should look and what the area should be like, what the locker facilities will be like, dry land training. All of that we could not have done without the input that we got from the Fox Jets. So thank you so much for that, and thank you for your help to raise funds to make it a possibility. It's been a lot of years in coming. Thank you. We need a motion here.
All right. I am very pleased to move to adopt the resolution accepting the donation of $30,000 from Team Fox Jets toward the Aquatic Center addition.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Thank you very much. The next item is naming rights agreement for the pool.
Yes,
Mr.
Your
Otto.
Honor, and this item is very closely tied to the previous item with the Fox Jets. But before I ask Mr. and Mrs. Davis to come forward, I want to tell you a little bit about the background in working with Mr. Mark Davis. Really the longtime leader of the Fox Jets, and I would really describe him as somewhat behind the scenes, but a very, very strong and charismatic leader, but somebody that also really helped pull this whole partnership together. And very much behind the scenes, but at the same time, when he was needed to be out front as a part of the Fox Jets organization, he's always been there on their behalf, and not just when it comes to the aquatics facility, but in many years before, as that organization has been growing and moving forward. And they have come forward with a naming rights of $100,000 for the recreation pool to be named the Mark and Patricia Davis Recreation Pool. And so we are very fortunate for that to happen. And it's really very, very appropriate that is coming from a couple that are very much tied to the swimming community in and around this area and has really brought forward and grown the Fox Jets organization. So with that, I'd like to invite Mr. and Mrs. Davis to come forward.
Mayor and City Council members, we're very excited to be here tonight. 22 years ago, Trish and I brought our kids to Eden Prairie. We've never been a member of your community in terms of living here, but we've been strong supporters, as you know, and we're excited that we've been here. I don't know if people still want me on the board after 22 years, but I seem to have hung around for that long. 5 years ago, when the City Council decided to make this great effort to bring a pool forward into the community, we were very excited as our team, both for the benefits of Team Foxjet, but more for the benefits of the community at large. And so we put our full effort in. I stood before you, and we made a commitment to fundraise and fundraise $500,000 to help support that. And I'm here tonight to say that we're delivering on our promise to do what we said we would do 5 years ago in our support. And Trish and I are very excited that we can bring kind of the final piece and be part of your community forever in terms of our contribution that we've worked so hard to do with the Fox Jets over the years. It's a great organization. I'm still involved because I'm excited to be involved all these years. And as you see from the previous presentation, we've got a great board and leadership and great team. All kinds of teams come up and grow around us, but we seem to maintain and grow our membership, and we're proud to be part of the Eden Prairie community. Thank you.
Just don't tell Minnetonka.
Yeah, that's right. They'll want one too. Well, between you, Mark, and what Jay said, you kind of pretty much took all the remarks that I had away from me. But I'd just like to say how much I admire the work that you did with Fox Jets and the tenacity that you had to approach the council with the need for an improved swimming pool, which is desperately needed. It failed in its first referendum. You didn't abandon it. You stuck with it. You kept pestering us, and I'm so glad you did. And you worked hard on planning the new facility and making sure it was everything it could possibly be. If we were going to do an upgrade, let's do it the right way. And I just am so grateful that you did that, and I can't think of anything better than to have this pool named after you guys. Thank you. She's also one of my best friends.
Just on a personal note, while the mayor is coming up here, all three of our kids swam for the Team Fox Jets, and they were swimming with Mark and Trisha's kids, and I know they've been out of the program for a long time, so I'm really impressed that you guys have stayed with Team Fox Jets and continued to enhance the club and to guide its leadership, and I know it's under strong leadership, and that's why it's been so successful. So thank you for all your years of service. We really do appreciate it in our community.
All right, is there a motion?
I would move to adopt the resolution accepting the donation from Mark and Patricia Davis and authorizing entering into naming rights agreement relating to the aquatics expansion project.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, everybody. This is an unusual night. 5 really wonderful things. 4 huge donations, and then that great owl. So that put us a little bit behind, but is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Anything to add or delete?
Just one item under council member reports, A2, so 14A2.
Okay. All in favor of the agenda as amended?
Aye.
Motion passes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the council workshop held on Tuesday, June 13th?
Move to approve.
Second.
Any items to correct? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Got that to me.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the council meeting held that same date?
So moved.
Second.
Any corrections to those? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Consent calendars or motion?
Move approval?
Second.
Anything to pull for discussion? Hearing nothing, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. First public hearing, a code amendment related to daycare facilities. Mr. Getchell.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. It is our first and only public hearing. We have some ordinances and resolutions tonight, but this is our only public hearing, and this is a code amendment item. I think you've seen a number of these in our zoning code that we've been doing quite a bit of updating and cleaning up our code over the last several months in terms of definitions and applications in the zoning code. What we have tonight is amending the zoning code related to daycare facilities, and quite frankly, adding the definition of daycare facilities and the term daycare facilities to our zoning code. In the past, we've historically interpreted daycare facilities to be allowed in several different districts in Eden Prairie, but this code amendment, which has been recommended and approved by the Planning Commission, is to specifically define a daycare facility, and then also to state, and this is based on quite a bit of research regionally, to state that it could be a use that would be allowed in the commercial, office, transit-oriented development, town center, airport commercial, and airport office districts, and then it would be allowed in the public district as an accessory use. So we'll be adding the definition and allowing this in several of our districts where appropriate. This in no way has any relationship to home daycare. That's something that's defined in state statute and is, as you know, and allowed in residential zones under certain state and county regulations. These are not those. These are commercial daycare facilities in non-residential districts. So staff is certainly able to answer any questions that you may have, but that should describe it in summary.
Any questions for staff? This is a public hearing. Is there anyone from the audience that wants to address the council on this code amendment for daycare facilities?
Seeing none, I move to close the public hearing and approve the first reading of the ordinance to amend City Code Section 11.02, 11.20, 11.25, 11.26, 11.27, 11.28, 11.29, and 11.35, defining daycare facility and allow as a permitted use in the office, commercial, transit-oriented development, town center, airport commercial, airport office, and public zoning districts.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Payment of claims, is there a motion for approval?
Move approval.
Second.
Any items to question? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Aho.
Aye.
Councilmember Butcher-Wickstrom.
Aye.
Councilmember Case.
Aye.
Councilmember Nelson.
Aye.
Mayor Terrell Lukens.
Aye. Ordinances and resolutions, we have first requested approval of a second reading of an ordinance amending City Code Chapter 9 relating to keeping chickens in the city. Mr. Getchell.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. As you know, this has been something that has been discussed, researched, and considered for over 2 years now. I think this is our third out of the last 5 meetings where we've had consideration of this ordinance. So now we're on to the second reading of the ordinance, which the first reading did pass unanimously with the City Council, but there were a number of alterations and requests that were made between first and second reading that I could briefly go over. Mr. Shadeen, our zoning administrator, had been here both in the May and June meetings to go through all the research and development that led to this ordinance. The chief and I could certainly answer, city attorney, any questions you have, but I'm just going to jump to the end of the last meeting and what's been put in here since the last meeting. So first of all, we have a registration program with a fee associated with it, a one-time $75 fee. The fee is not needed in city code. It can be set administratively. I'm just stating that publicly through research and development. We feel that can certainly recover all the administrative costs necessary and would be a one-time cost, $75 registration fee. We also have in here the reduction of the number of chickens that people can keep from 5 to 4. That was based on the previous meeting, and I think, as I said as well, much of the public input we received was more in the 3 to 4 chicken range, so that does match with a lot of the public input that we received. We put in some design standards. We had some discussions about, it can be very subjective, the type of coop that you're going to have, but we want to have some minimum design standards to protect from, I think, some discussion of the cardboard box with the holes cut in it, and there's certain minimum design standards that I think are necessary, and that was a good idea. We have a revocation process as well. A certain number of violations, I believe it's 3 in a 12-month period, can lead to a revocation of the license as well. We had some discussion about the timing. We updated the timing of the process so it flows properly from notification to registration to inspection prior to the operation being set up as well. So those are some of the highlights, but basically what we're asking of you tonight is approve the second reading of the ordinance, and then upon publication, summary publication in the newspaper, what would then go into effect is allowing backyard chickens in the city, keeping backyard chickens in the city of Eden Prairie. And you remember, again, harking back to the previous meeting, there are setback requirements from the property, setback requirements from neighboring property. Oh, and I want to mention one last thing, one error or one correction that's needed. We did have language in here that required residents to re-register if the coop had been moved around the property. And I think what we really meant to say is if you move to another property, if you move within Eden Prairie and you move your chicken operation, you would need to re-register. But within your own property, as long as you adhere to the setbacks, they might move around their coops on a very small, minimal basis. So the correction we want to make is not to necessarily prohibit wheeled coops. I think there is a certain desire to move around within a few feet the coop, but in no way impinging or infringing on the setbacks. That would not be acceptable. So I think within the motion to approve the second reading, it would be removing the restriction on wheeled coops.
Thank you. Any discussion, questions, or comments from the council?
No, make a motion?
Yep.
I would move to approve the second reading of the ordinance amending City Code Chapter 9 relating to the keeping of chickens in the city of Eden Prairie.
Second.
And that includes removing the prohibition on wheeled.
With the correction that our fearless city manager just expressed. I want that in the motion.
Fearless.
No.
Right.
Okay, and that's accepted. Okay. All right, so we
Second.
have a motion and a second. Anything to discuss? Any questions? We've been through this quite a bit. Mr. Rosso, did you want to say something?
Just one item, there's, at the very end of the ordinance, we inserted the gender neutral provision for the entire city code.
Oh,
So every enforcement provision that Councilmember Case commented on the other day, we're now correcting that by the very last provision.
Nice. Thank you.
all right. Thank you. Did you make the motion?
I did
No,
make
that's
the
not for roosters. No, roosters are roosters.
That's a good clarification.
All right,
Humans that we're talking about.
We've got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The next item is a
Can I just
resolution.
ask a quick question? How long, have been emailing, how long now until we develop a process or that people could actually have chickens in the city of Eden Prairie?
That's a great question. So I would say that we'll be ready next week, right upon publication. So next Thursday, in the Eden Prairie News, once this is published, it takes effect. So what would that be? The 20th of July. So on July 20th, you can start contacting Jim Shadeen, City of Eden Prairie Police Department, and register for backyard chicken keeping.
All right, thank you.
Okay, the next item is a resolution supporting the Paris Agreement. I think that after, at our last workshop, when I mentioned that I had signed on with climate mayors, there was interest in developing a resolution supporting that action in the Paris Agreement. Mr. Getchell, did you want to add anything to that? I can't get it up on the screen, so I can't read anything.
Here.
Oh, okay. I can maybe do an explanation why Mr. Case pulls that up. So, as you mentioned, Mayor, this is a follow-up to your joining with the 300 other mayors across the country, and the council requesting this be brought forward for consideration at this council meeting. So it is a resolution for council consideration. I guess the only thing that I would add is in the now therefore be it resolved clauses, you're going to see a commitment on the city to actually continue much of what we're already doing with Sustainable Eden Prairie. So in terms of what the commitments are through actions, there isn't anything necessarily new or unique in terms of actions in the now therefore be it resolved clause. It's some of the work that's being done with Sustainable Eden Prairie.
Okay.
But yeah, this is being brought forward at your request.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Aho.
So I have a number of questions regarding this, and I guess the first question I'd like to ask all of you is, why are we bringing this forward now? What is the need for us to be putting this forward at this time? And I would like you to comment on that. Also, have all of you had a chance to read the agreement? So I have here a copy of the agreement. It's 32 pages. This is called the Adoption of the Paris Agreement. So that's 32 pages, and there's about 12 pages of the actual agreement. There's 29 articles. And it's pretty complicated. I happen to be an electrical engineer. I fancy myself as being a scientist to some degree. And there's a lot of stuff in here that I'm not so sure I understand how this works and how it's supposed to be implemented. I'd just like to read a couple of brief sections in here. So first of all, it is set up, and so the parties of the agreement, or the convention, means the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, adopted New York May 9th in 1992. And so this is the parties that are making the agreement. So one of the questions I have is, as a city, where do we have a role in adopting a resolution that speaks to an international agreement that's made between countries? And so why wasn't it adopted by the U.S. Senate? What is your feeling of why past President Obama did not bring this to the U.S. Senate to ratify this agreement and just did it executively as the president? And who is going to pay for all of this? So let me just read a couple of quick excerpts from the actual agreement. So here's Article 2. This agreement, in enhancing the implementation of the convention, including its objective, aims to strengthen the global response to the threat of climate change in the context of sustainable development and efforts to eradicate poverty. including by holding the increase of global average temperature to well below 2 degrees centigrade above pre-industrial levels, and to pursue efforts to limit the temperature increase to 1.5 degrees centigrade above pre-industrial levels, recognizing this would significantly reduce the risks and impacts of climate change, increasing the ability to adapt the adverse impacts of climate change and foster climate resilience and low greenhouse gas emissions development in a manner that does not threaten food production, making finance flows consistent with pathway towards low greenhouse gas emissions and climate resilient development. This agreement will be implemented to reflect equity and the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities in the light of different national circumstances. Now, if all of you can totally understand that, I'm very impressed. Let me read Article 4, Section 5. Support shall be provided to developing country parties for the implementation of this article in accordance with Articles 9, 10, 11, recognizing that enhanced support for developing country parties will allow for higher ambition in their actions. So in this agreement, really, the countries that are really participating the most in greenhouse gas development are really exempted from it for quite a number of years, and the developed countries are supposed to pay for them to implement it. Article 9. Developed country parties shall provide financial resources to assist developing country parties with respect to both mitigation and adaptation in continuation of their existing obligations under the convention. Other parties are encouraged to provide and continue to provide such support voluntarily. As part of the global effort, developed country parties should continue to take the lead in mobilizing climate finance from a wide variety of sources, instruments, and channels, including the significant role of public funds. So that means us supporting it through a variety of actions, including supporting country-driven strategies and taking into account the needs and priorities of developing country parties. Such mobilization of climate finance should represent a progression beyond previous efforts. The provision of scaled-up financial resources should aim to achieve a balance between adaptation and mitigation, taking into account the country-driven strategies and the priorities and needs of developing country parties, especially those that are particularly vulnerable to the adverse effects of climate change and have significant capacity constraints, such as the least developed countries and small island developing states, considering the need for public and grant-based resources and adaptation. Developed country parties shall biannually communicate indicative, quantitative, and qualitative information related to the paragraphs 1 and 3 of this article as applicable, including as available projected levels of public financial resources to be provided to developing country parties. Other parties providing resources are encouraged to communicate biannually to such information on a voluntary basis. The global stocktake referred to in Article 14 shall take into account the relevant information provided by developing country parties and/or agreement bodies on the efforts related to climate finance. Developing country parties shall provide transparent and consistent information on support for developing country parties provided and mobilized through public interventions biannually in accordance with the modalities, procedures, and guidelines to be adopted by the Conference of the Parties, serving as the meeting of the parties to the Paris Agreement and its first session. As stipulated in Article 13, Paragraph 13, other parties are encouraged to do so. The financial mechanism of the convention, including its operating entities, shall serve as financial mechanism of this agreement. The institutions serving this agreement, including the operating entities of the financial mechanism of the convention, shall aim to ensure efficient access to financial resources through simplified approval procedures and enhanced readiness support for developing country parties, in particular for the least developed countries and small island developing states in the context of their national climate strategies and plans. Now, those are just a couple excerpts from the 29 articles that make up the Paris Agreement. having read through most of it, not all of it, not really having a chance to go through everything in detail, it is a very complicated, detailed plan. I think for us as a city to get out ahead of this and say we are supporting this and put a proposal or a supporting agreement is maybe a little bit ahead of the game. I think when the Congress hasn't even ratified it, when the Senate hasn't ratified it, there's been a lot of testimony that has been placed that really questions a lot of the aspects of this this deal, that it really is not a very good deal for the United States of America. And I don't think that's necessarily something that we want to get behind and back. And I think it is well and good that the city of Eden Prairie does everything we possibly can to reduce the amount of emissions that we produce and to reduce the amount of energy that we use. And I think we are doing a fantastic job at that. And I commend our staff for all the efforts that they made on the 2040-15 project and all that they're doing in the future. And I think we need to continue to do that. But I really have a lot of questions as to what we're doing in supporting a international agreement that is really not that fully vetted by our own Congress. And I really don't think that we ought to be approving this at this time. So that's some of my thoughts.
Thank you. Councilmember Case.
Well, I'm not going to read for 10 minutes.
Have you read it, though? Have you read the whole agreement?
You know, what you've just read right there was very convincing against your case. So thank you for reading that, but I have not. Let me say a couple things, though. First, we're not approving it, and we're not even passing a resolution that says we are supporting it. Let me read what we're passing.
We are moving to adopt a resolution to support the Paris Agreement.
Member Case has the floor.
Can I continue?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Our resolutions are as follows. Indicates that continued commitment to reducing greenhouse emissions through Sustainable Eden Prairie Initiative and Aspire Eden Prairie. Second, we join other U.S. cities in the Climate Mayors Network in adopting and supporting the goals of the Paris Agreement. That's completely different than endorsing it. 3, commits to continue exploring the potential benefits and costs of adopting policies and programs that promote the long-term goal of greenhouse gas emissions and reduction while maximizing economic and social co-benefits of such action. 4, encourages our delegates in Washington, D.C. and St. Paul and our president to take meaningful steps towards reducing energy use and developing renewable sources of energy. Now, I've done a lot of Googling today as well regarding the Paris Accord and regarding various stances on it. And there's a lot of, trying to stay away from fake news, but there's a lot of busyness and noise out there on all sides of this. And I just know as a teacher of 6th graders, having assigned research reports for 30 years and trying to teach kids what's a good resource and what's a source of truth, it's busy out there right now. But I went out on the NASA website on global climate change. So, on some level, if you can get as close to a source of truth as possible, I would say the NASA global climate change site is pretty darn close. On the NASA global climate change site, the statement was made, 97% of all climate scientists on Earth today agree with the findings of the Paris Accord. The climate is warming, the trends, and it's a result of human activity. So we can argue that. If you go out on various websites, it's busy out there. But on some level, my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren's Earth is at stake. And it's going to be allowed to be destroyed by people like you who are choosing inaction.
I am not disagreeing
that
the climate is changing.
Let me finish for a second. 194 out of 195 countries that signed the Paris Accord are still with it. So something's in that. 194 out of 195 nations. In our G20, 19 of 20 in the last couple of days have committed to pursuing the Paris Accord. There's something wrong here. So, Brad, you asked at the beginning, why now? I think our president made that decision, why now? He chose to go a path that's not being supported. By the last poll taking, 82% of Americans polled disagree with his actions. So yes, the current Congress has not chosen to vote to support it. But to say that we're on we as a council trying to find a way to endorse what we have already been doing here in the city of Eden Prairie the last 20 years, to say that we're off on some limb that's different than the vast majority, I think would be very, very wrong. I think that this is simply a confirmation and a validation of exactly the path that Eden Prairie's been on since we've been on the council. There's nothing new here. The Paris Accord simply has codified in many, many ways what we have already chosen to do as a city. There's no extra cost to this, but we are making a statement to the people of Eden Prairie, but also to the state of Minnesota, but also to the United States of America, along with 300 mayors and growing daily, and states. What are there now, 18 states or something? I mean, this is an effort that if the president's going to duck, and if the United States government in some ways is going to duck our responsibilities, then there are people at grassroots levels that can at least step forward and do what is right. And I think that's, at the end of the day, Brad, and if you can sleep on this, more power to you. But at the end of the day, we've got to do what's right. We have to do what is ethically and morally right. And I believe you cannot say that. Now, you can say it tonight, but I believe in your heart of hearts, you cannot say that. So that's why tonight, for me, it's an open shut. This is a very easy resolution simply to support our mayor, who I think was courageous too, and I commend Nancy Tara-Lukens, and I want to, as a council, simply give a resolution of support for the action that she did.
I agree that I think we need to, we are given this earth to take care of it, and I feel very strongly that we are stewards of our earth, and we need to be very careful stewards of our earth and do everything we can to protect our air, our water, all of our natural resources. I just think that the agreement, the way it is drafted, the way it is written, the way it was adopted, is not a good agreement for the United States. And that is the reason I am against it, and not for what it stands for. So I am not saying that I'm against trying to achieve goals that help our natural resources. I am just against this agreement. Listen to this funding statement here. The funding required by the Paris Agreement will be significant and continuing. The principal depository for such funds is the Green Climate Fund, the GCF, which assists developing countries in adapting to climate change. We read it right out of this text. The GCF was established by the 2009 Copenhagen Accord, which committed developing countries by 2020 to provide $100 billion per year, every year, into perpetuity. The Paris Agreement obligates developed countries such as the United States to provide financial resources to assist developing country parties with respect to both mitigation and adaptation. In the decision adopting the Paris Agreement, the COP21 set the goal of these funds at a floor of US $100 billion per year. Only developed nations like the United States are obligated to contribute to the GCF, while the developing nations are encouraged to make voluntary contributions.
Okay, you keep coming back to that. Let's keep coming back to the requested motion. What is there under the resolution that now therefore be it resolved? What is there that you object to? Would you feel better if we didn't call it a resolution of support, a resolution supporting the Paris Agreement? How about resolution supporting the goals, the climate goals of the Paris Agreement?
I think if we have a resolution to support Eden Prairie's goals to to achieve a better environment through our, through all of our efforts. I don't like saying that we're agreeing with the Paris Agreement, because I don't agree with everything that's read in the Paris Agreement. And I guarantee all of you haven't read all 32 pages of this
I
agreement.
guarantee you haven't either, and I guarantee
It's
you
very
that,
complicated.
I guarantee you that there are, every bill, 100% of every bill that's out there, you would find things that you don't agree with. And things get passed, things get done. This is an intent to show those who are, have more power than we do, that this is an item of concern to us, that we need momentum behind this issue, and that the way that you deal with this issue is you continue to negotiate and work to make something that works for everybody rather than walk out on it.
I think
Wickstrom.
President Trump voted to walk out on it so that he could renegotiate it. And he said very clearly that he wasn't walking away from it, that he was backing out of it so that we could renegotiate a better deal for the United States, still keeping in mind our goals of reduced emissions and all of the good aspects of it. But the implementation of this is really, I don't think, in our best interest.
Well, you're not hearing much rhetoric about that in Washington now, so I think we need grassroots level, bringing that issue up again from the grassroots, because it's not happening nationally. Councilmember Butcher Wickstrom.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say that, I do appreciate the caution that Councilmember Aho has put forward. However, I have to say that I think what we're looking at here truly is the spirit of the Paris Accord. And I think it's generally known that the Paris Accord is, works around this concept of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. That is a huge portion of what it is. I have to say, I don't think it's necessarily perfect either in terms of how much financial commitment we are supposed to be making to it or should make to it. However, I don't think that there is anything perfect. I think we have to start with a place, given that this, I think the spirit of it is very important, and I think it is the right thing to do. The other thing I want to say is our resolution is very specific. That is not something that has been read here tonight, but it is about all the good work that Eden Prairie has been doing, and we have been financing it. We have been financing it.
I agree, and I think we did a great job doing it.
I do too. And that is exactly what we have in here. We're talking about the kinds of things that we have done with our 2010-15 initiative, that has resulted in our 21.8% increase in energy efficiency and 44% increase in fuel efficiency. These are the things that we are talking about in this particular resolution. I think as a local government we need to do it. I think that's why we've gone to Washington, and that's why we've spoken with our representatives, was to let them know how we feel about not just this issue, but other issues. That's why we do it. That's why we just went in March to talk to our Washington representatives. So we're committed to doing it, and I am committed to endorsing this. I think it's a very good resolution, and it is a start, even though it is not perfect in terms of the Paris Accord.
Councilmember Nelson.
Yes, I plan to support this. Eden Prairie has been doing a great job lowering our energy use and, quite frankly, saving about 4% of Eden Prairie taxes that would be higher, and they saves it every year after year after year. We'd sort of like to continue encouraging residents and businesses to cut 1% to 2% out of their energy use and also save that money for their family. It's the kind of thing that people need to stand up and say, yes, it's time to cut our energy use. We know that there are sustainable goals that need to be met. We're going to do our small part in it. And in all likelihood, that will also save families some money in doing it. So I think a lot of people are going to start thinking, how can I save that 1%? And in fact, go with the international goals that are necessary for our world. And this is a way that we can come as a community and say that we have been doing it, we're going to continue doing it, and we would like everyone, we're joining the whole goals out there for our piece of the United States. It doesn't have anything to do with all these pages and pages. It lists very specifically, and I think when we make this resolution, instead of just saying we support this, we should actually read what it is we're resolving.
Yeah.
It'll take a little bit of time to do, but it's good for Eden Prairie, it's good for our families and our businesses, and we've been doing it, we plan to continue doing it, and that's what we're saying.
I think the goal here is to elevate this from a grassroots level to much more of a national level. We can do everything we can as a city, but if we're an island in the midst of an area that's not doing anything about climate change, about carbon pollution, it's kind of futile. So this is to elevate that discussion and encourage our state and our federal government to be more active and more assertive, and because it's not all about saving money, it's about saving the planet.
Yeah.
Well, I applaud all the efforts that we've made, and I agree with them, and I think the city has done a great job, and I'm very much in favor of all those. I just think that we're doing this more as a political statement, and I don't like city councils being activists in terms of being, making political statements, and
But Brad, that's what we do.
When we make a resolution supporting the Paris Agreement, that's what we're doing, is we're making a political statement.
But that's what we do when we go to Washington and we lobby with our legislators.
Right, and we do
Same
it that
thing.
way. We do it behind the scenes. We talk to our legislators and we tell them directly. But to do it this way, I guess I'm not a big fan of this.
But we don't always do it behind the scenes. We also had a resolution of support for LRT that we took to Washington and talked with our legislators about.
That's a
So this is
state.
not-
That's a state and local issue, though. This is
No, it's a federal issue.
This is an international issue, and so that's why I disagree.
Okay. Councilmember Case.
Yeah, I guess I just want to respond to the whole concept that something's political and something's not. There's some arbitrary line that gets drawn a lot when people start throwing that around, and I would argue that everything we do the moment we step into this position is political, because that's who we are, because political is to represent people in terms of a voting situation. So to say, I kind of just listening to what you said, I'll reframe it, and you can certainly disagree with it, but okay, we can be political on a state kind of concept, or maybe political a little bit federal, but not suddenly international. But we're not being political, even though I think that would even be okay to take a resolution stand. But we're not really coming up with this resolution because of an international issue. We're coming up with it because the federal government has not taken a stand that we believe at a local level should be, and because we have been taking that stand. So I would gladly receive the, not accusation, but the concept that we're being political, absolutely, and we should be, and that's what we do, and that's why we were elected. And I would say that everything that we do up here is political. I'm okay, and I don't know if this will garner Brad's vote or not, but I'm okay with this resolution, and all this terminology came out of staff, so there's nothing to say we can't change it in the moment, not vote for it, send it back, do whatever. But I think based on what I'm hearing, the people that are in favor of it say is that we're really, and I would accept Brad's criticism on this, I'm really not proposing that we as a city council endorse the Paris Accord, because that truly is a federal government idea, but to endorse the climate goals within the Paris Accord is really what I think the 300 mayors signing on have done. And I would be okay with the wording to say we adopt a resolution supporting the climate goals of the Paris Agreement, because I think that's what we as a city of Eden Prairie have been living out over the last decade for sure. And if that's supported by the rest of you, I would be fine with that.
Do you want to make a motion then?
Sure.
With the
What about taking the word Paris out of it and the Paris Agreement completely out of it? I support all of the goals that we're achieving in Eden Prairie, but I don't support the Paris Agreement.
Well, to me, that's what makes this meaningful, is to send a message to the federal government that we, and to everyone.
So it's
and-
more
and-
about making a political statement than it is about
Again,
our
I'm
goals.
not, that concept of throwing around the political, yes, absolutely. Everything that we do, everything you ever do, Brad, since you've ever been elected to the city council, is to make a political statement. If not, you're not doing your job. So are we sending an appropriate message out to the people of Eden Prairie, to the state of Minnesota people, to the federal government, that we here in Eden Prairie support the climate goals of what 184 nations out of 105 signers support, and what out of the G20 largest nations on earth, 19 of them support? Are we as a city council willing and committing to abiding by that, which we've done for a decade? Yes. Let's send that message. If that's political, by golly, I'm proud of it. So I will make a motion, and if you want to speak to, are you okay if I make the motion, then you can speak to the motion as well and say, because you had a comment to make.
I do. I have
Do you
a
wanna
comment.
make- okay.
I just want to make it. I say we leave it the way it is. I'm sorry, Brad, but I do. I don't know that you would have supported anyway, because I do think we're supporting the Paris Agreement. I do. And I think it's the spirit. It's what I've been saying. It's the spirit. It's not every word of the, the 36 pages, but it's the spirit of that agreement that everybody understands. So I would like to leave it the way it is.
Okay, do you want to make the motion with it left? I would support that.
Okay. I would move to adopt a resolution supporting the Paris Agreement.
Second.
We've had plenty of discussion. I don't see any buttons going, so all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, thank you. Motion passes. Next item is students on commissions. We have a number of applicants. 30 applicants were received this year. Mr. Getchell?
Yes, Mayor and Council, I'm pleased to announce that similar to our regular commission process, we've been getting a record number of applications. It keeps moving up and up. So this year we did have a record number of both regular commission applications and also now student commission applications. And I think the difficult part in that is that we cannot necessarily take everybody that applied. There's a certain limit to the number of commissioners that we can take on each commission, but we are maximizing as many as we can. You can even see, as many as 4 or 5 on a particular commission, but we did emphasize those that might be seniors in high school. So there were many juniors that applied, and there were some juniors that we thought if they apply again next year, they have a chance to make it. So for those of you out there that do not hear your name called when the council moves to appoint, please apply in a future year, because we had a record number of applicants. And it is an excellent program to allow students, residents of Eden Prairie. They don't have to necessarily go to just Eden Prairie High School. We're represented by 2, 3, or 4, or 5 different high schools, but residents of Eden Prairie that want to be involved in their local government. This is an opportunity to be involved in 4 of our different 5 city commissions. So with that, you have the names in front of you that staff is recommending through the liaisons and the applications for our student program, which will begin in the fall. There'll be an orientation in August, and their terms will start when school starts in the fall.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Nelson, do you want to start with the first motion?
I move to appoint to the Conservation Committee Abhishek Arvali, Sophia Trumpe, Elizabeth Arnold, and Hayden Burden.
Do we want to keep going?
Yes.
Or all in one
Yeah,
motion?
yeah.
Okay. And I so apologize for not pronouncing correctly the names. Appoint to the Heritage Preservation Commission Anika Shetty, Caleb Miller, and Neha Brupataraju.
I appoint to the Human Rights and Diversity Commission Ashwin Senthil Kumar, Mu'alim Kulud, Carolyn Mason, Taryn Rao, Mason Stoltz, and Meghana Chimata.
And I appoint to the Parks and Recreation and National Resources Commission William Hemler, James Yu, Janvi Shah, John Lindholm, and Govind Makaram.
Second to all of them.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you again to all the students that applied. Sorry we could not take all of you, but as Mr. Getchell mentioned, please apply again if you're a junior. Thank you. The next item that I wanted to bring up was the grand opening of the Minnesota State Capitol. And we've been asked by the Capitol Celebration Committee to adopt a resolution encouraging the people of Eden Prairie to attend the grand opening of the Minnesota State Capitol. And this grand opening event, this celebration, is August 11th, 12th, and 13th of this year. There will be tours, there will be bands, food, all kinds of activities. It's going to be a wonderful event, a statewide participation, all kinds of things going on. You can get information on the State of Minnesota website. I'd also like to mention that our state capitol, which was refurbished, is one of the most ornate state capitals in our country. It was designed by Cass Gilbert, and it's simply a beautiful building. Our council member, Sherry Butcher-Wickstrom, her husband, Mark, who's in the audience tonight, has been one of the craftspeople that worked on restoration of this beautiful capitol. Mark is a European-trained stone carver, and he's one of 5 stone carvers that restored the entire exterior of the Capitol building. Mark has worked for 4 years on that, and he carved all over the building exterior. And this work needed to be done not only because of wear and tear that impaired the beauty of the building, but also for safety reasons. Incidentally, Mark was also commissioned to carve the Fallen Workers Memorial. So I was telling Councilmember Wickstrom that the imprint that he has left on the state is much greater than any of us will leave, because you've carved things in stone that bear your fingerprints. So thank you for the work that you did. Did you want to say anything, Mark? Great. Come on up.
And while he's up, we should probably sing happy birthday to him, since it's your birthday tonight, or today.
Can you turn the microphone a little bit towards you? Yeah. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, council members, my wonderful wife, Sherry. Thank you for letting me say a few words. You gave a wonderful introduction about being a European-trained stonemason already, so stone carver. I just wanted to mention a couple other things. I'm a proud 33-year member of the Minnesota Bricklayers and Stonemasons Union. I'm a proud resident of Eden Prairie, and I'm a proud citizen of the state of Minnesota. Today, I celebrated my 4th consecutive birthday while working on the Minnesota State Capitol, a tremendous project. During that time, I was involved with many different aspects of that project, from working in the tunnels, working on the interior marble, refinishing the floors and the granite. I didn't get to do any painting anywhere, but removing stones that were slated for demolition, drawing shop tickets for those replacement stones that would be put in their place. But perhaps my greatest assignment was working on the replacement and recarving of the architectural ornamentation of Cass Gilbert's original design. I was involved with the creation of the models to supply to an army of fabricators. I was involved in the recarving of the Corinthian capitals and the cartouches, some of them being from raw blocks. The project has truly been a crowning moment in my career as a tradesman. I want to thank our lawmakers and our residents of the state for making the wise decision to do this important restoration on this wonderful building. It was truly an honor and a privilege to be entrusted as a tradesperson to restore the people's house. This is a memory I will carry for the rest of my days. Also, I want to thank this city council for having the initiative to make this wonderful declaration in honoring that project. I hope that the residents of Eden Prairie will take the opportunity to visit their restored house. And thank you very much.
Thank you for coming out tonight. Is there a motion to adopt this resolution?
I would love to make that motion. So I move to adopt the resolution encouraging the people of the city of Eden Prairie to attend the grand opening of the Minnesota State Capitol.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Please show up in St. Paul, August 11th, 12th, and 13th. Councilmember Case, you had an issue.
Yeah, I just want to make a kind of a broad recognition of our amazing city staff. Brad Aho, Sherry Butcher Wickstrom, and I had the privilege, really, of being around on 4th of July, the Round Lake Park celebration of our nation's independence, and just to see the well-oiled machine that after years and years and years is just virtually flawless. And it's just great thanks to our police and our fire, and then the 50 volunteers and our, I don't know how many staff, Rick, actually were out there that day, but a tremendous amount. And I want to give special recognition to Lori Brink and Lindsay Danhauser. Are they still here, or?
Lori
Yep,
is.
thank you. Amazing job. So thank you so much for all that you did, and it makes it bears well on us just because we end up, even though it's not our doing, but we end up hiring Rick, who hires all these great people, and they run these amazing celebrations. So thank you on behalf of the council, but also the people of Eden Prairie. I think we got an amazing celebration that day.
Absolutely.
Thank you for mentioning that. Okay, the pickleball issue. Mr. Lothammer, you're here. I'm sorry that this meeting has gone on much longer than I thought, but I hope you found some of it very interesting. We have a few pickleball players that hung around.
I lost 90% of what I thought were my interested people for this presentation.
Sorry, Jay.
I may be down to only one interested, and that could be my wife watching at home. So last council meeting, actually, Councilmember Case asked if I would come back with a summary or an update on both pickleball and cricket. So we're going to get a little of both tonight, and you've heard some more pickleball information earlier, so I'll try not to go too in-depth on that, but give you a kind of a perspective from staff and what we see. We're going to start with the PowerPoint presentation, and then partly through that I've got a grid to be able to show you too, but if we could go back to the PowerPoint. We go back, at least in recent time, when pickleball had come to a couple Parks Commission meetings, the Pickleball Association, being the Southwest Metro Pickleball Association, and really had the Parks Commission kind of chew on it, weigh in, and bring it back to the City Council on the concept at that point of having a large facility, 12 courts is what proposed in one local area. And we'll remind you again of the Starring Lake concept. Pickleball had also asked, could they move forward with some naming rights or some fundraising that would give recognition similar to, and what we had told the council would be similar to how it was done with Hockey Association, Fox Jets that you saw tonight, or also the Miracle League field. And so they have been out looking at other companies and organizations to say, would you be willing to sponsor, to buy some naming rights for this? And that's where we had kind of left it until Councilmember Case had asked for another report here tonight. Just going back quickly in our history of pickleball, 2012 at Pioneer Park, we were really one of the first communities in this southwest area to have any pickleball courts, both in 2012 at Pioneer and then also indoors at the community center. 4 courts exist over there as well, primarily in the wintertime, but there is some summer use as well. One of the things that happened at Pioneer is the deterioration of the courts were happening. It was time to have some reconstruction happen. Rather than go out and do a full reconstruction, we went with a barrier, basically. And this was about 1/4 of the cost. And it was really, we thought, would be something that would be successful and beneficial. When we do a drop test of pickleball balls on the Pioneer courts now, dropping a pickleball from 4 feet in the air, at Pioneer Park, it bounces 24 inches. At Franlow Park, it bounces 26 inches. So there is more bounce at Franlow than there is at Pioneer Park. For those that are familiar with tennis, a similar concept if you're playing on a hard court or if you're playing on clay court. There's going to be a difference there. Mr. Getcho and I both played tennis and pickleball over at Pioneer. We played tennis and pickleball over on the Franlow courts. We have an appreciation for the differences in both. We hear from some in the pickleball group that these are unplayable. We also hear from some in that play pickleball on the Pioneer courts now that they love it because they can actually have their own courts and don't have to play as a part of a large group. So there's some differences now emerging in how people want to play and gather. I would suggest that early on when people are learning how to play, when the sport was first getting introduced, having that large group come together, which is a great thing, especially for socialization, was something that was really the only way to play it. And because there were so few courts too, there weren't those other opportunities to say, here's the other 4 or 5 people I want to play with. I'm going to go do my own thing. You were either part of the big group or you didn't have any opportunity to play. That's been changing as other courts around us emerge and as other types of pickleball players start to get into the sport and start to emerge too. And I think that's an important concept to think about when I get to some suggestions that we have for going forward. We then moved to Riley, which brand new surface down there now, but lights went there a few years ago. So that became an opportunity to play pickleball or tennis at night. But also within the last couple of weeks, we just resurfaced and reopened it. And so there are 6 courts there. Again, not permanent, but a really good surface. Identical surface to what Franlow in terms of hardness and conditions are. We also have been using Round Lake, as they've indicated, as part of the 4th of July tournament. And that being temporarily marked, temporary nets, has worked to get a large court facility on that big weekend or couple weekend events that may happen in the summer. And then going on to Franlow in 2015, that was when we converted over to permanent 4 courts at Franlow. Now over time we've been kind of right sizing or right numbering the amount of tennis courts and basketball courts that we've had. If you go back over the last 15 years, some of the 2-court basketball or 2-court tennis courts have become a tennis and a basketball. And I'll show you a concept at Hidden Ponds that would continue to build on that, but be able to add potentially pickleball in at that location. So when you look at these court locations, almost all of them are either south of Pioneer Trail or very close to Pioneer Trail. So we are very south heavy, Riley being in the southwest, Pioneer basically being in the south central, Franlow being in the southeast. That's where all of our pickleball courts are located with the exception of the community center. So I have over on the document camera, somewhat similar to what was shown to you earlier, although this ends up taking in all of the courts that we know of that are both multi-purpose and then also permanent courts, because there's both. In every city, there seems to be a mix of both multi-purpose and permanent. It's only recently, though, that any of us within the last couple of years have really gone to be able to do permanent courts. At first, everybody was in the game with doing the shared tennis pickleball courts. Not perfect for either, but one of the things that all of us are discovering too now with the cost of doing the permanent courts, it's very expensive on a per court basis. And some of the examples that were used earlier of what might happen in a year or two, we're hearing from them as those cities as they go out to bid that what they had budgeted is coming back much more expensive than they thought, and they're having to retool. We talked to an architect today that's been bidding out a couple different projects lately of pickleball courts, and we were telling them what we've seen lately is in that $40,000 to $50,000 a court. They were encouraging us to use a budgeted number of more closer to $60,000 a court. Now that depends on what your site looks like. It depends on the number of courts that are together. There's a lot of factors, but it certainly isn't a cheap proposition going forward. And even with the tennis courts, that's why we use that layer over at Pioneer to see if we could get something that would work well or well enough at a fourth of the price of what we would usually have to do there. So again, a good variety. What we think going forward, when we look at this purely from what do we have in the budget, and we have plans going out to 2030 just to take care of the courts that we currently have. Minnesota is not friendly to tennis courts or to pavement or hard surfaces. So we're spending a good share of our dollars, especially some of these courts have been around for a long time. We're spending a good share of our dollars just rehabilitating them and keeping them so that the cracks aren't too big or that they're smooth enough and safe enough to play. So one of the things that we have coming up in 2018 is at Hidden Ponds. And if you're familiar with Hidden Ponds, there's actually grass in between the tennis and basketball court. So there's room there as we need to redo those two courts because of the condition they're in. If you went there, even now, you'd probably hope to play on a different court if you got there to play tennis. It's time for that to be done. So I wouldn't recommend that we put it off. But there is that potential because of the project itself, the grass in the middle, some economies of just adding another layer of asphalt in there. There's some potential to add a couple pickleball courts in, and if the bids come back right, to be able to fit that in the budgeted dollars that we currently have for 2018. Now, we've been hearing a lot about a 12-court facility, and I think that is probably really good for the region. And no question that on certain times of the day and certain days of the week, you'd probably see people playing there. But when we keep hearing about it from a community perspective, to me, this is a good step. Whether the 12-court comes to fruition or not, it's a good step if we could add a couple more that are really more towards that neighborhood and where families could actually bike to, walk to, ride to, not necessarily a drive-to destination. So that's one of the concepts that we have in play and I think could be very possible to happen. Starring Lake in 2019, that's when that court, both the tennis court and the basketball court, are in the plan to be totally redone. That's why one of the reasons we had selected that location, if we were going to do, when we did the feasibility study, if we were going to do 12 extra courts, that's the location we suggest that it could fit. And also because of the parking and the many other amenities that we told you about, that would be a good location if 12 courts were to come to fruition. So when we were before you with that feasibility study, we said, we don't have dollars for the new portion, but certainly the project, if it all came together at the same time, that would help all of the costs based on some of the quantities and economies of scale. So that's where it really got into, could it move forward as a fundraising type of project, giving us a couple years, giving the fundraising effort a couple years. This right now, again, reminds you a little bit of where that site would be. Right now, this slide shows you 10 potential pickleball courts. We believe that a dozen could fit there. If you go there today, there's a sand volleyball court that's kind of right in the middle that would need to be relocated. We'd flip where the basketball and the tennis court are. It's right now a site that has trees and berms, which when we put hard surface down, we got to go away from trees and berms to no trees and depressions. So there's a decent amount of earthwork. I still believe that if there is going to be a large site, that this is the site to be at. I also think that as we go forward with the project of just rehabbing the basketball tennis, we have some potential to plan for and maybe do some of the site prep within the budgeted dollars. I don't know that I would want to tell you that we would have enough to add 2 or 4 courts within those budgeted dollars, but I think there's at least the ability to plan for what might come next or what could be done in a scalable method should there not be funds available or fundraising available for that.
Jay, do you, just quickly, do you think, so if you added those courts as shown there, do you think that would be, when you're doing them in mass like that, if you're adding 10 or 12, would it be actually $60,000 per court in that particular situation?
We believe that it gets it back closer towards the 40, but there is a decent amount of that earthwork and also infiltration that needs to take place too. So there's some deep ponding that needs to happen in a swale because there's not a lot of extra room for the ponding, but the requirements that are there now, good requirements for water quality, really would require us to have a lot of infiltration based on that additional amount of hard surface.
So it's going to be close to 500,000 minimum?
That's what our previous estimate was. Now, again, some economies of scale because we're also doing tennis and basketball at the same time. If you did that whole project at once, you start to get a little better per court price. But Some of the standalones, when you look at the architectural fees, the design fees to it, the construction costs and construction observation, that's where one of our consultants that we've used on a lot of our projects, and they've also recently worked on some projects, pickleball specific and open bids, that's where they were encouraging us that 40 to 50 is on the lighter side of things and more towards that 60.
Could you explain the location of these courts to the old skating oval?
Yeah, just south of there.
Okay, but it won't impact that?
No, nope. So on the upper side of this slide is where the skating oval is, on the other side of the trail that goes through.
Other side, okay. Councilmember Nelson?
I do have one question. I drive by parks, tennis courts, and rarely do I see anybody playing on said tennis courts. Do we really need, are all of our tennis courts busy all weekends or sometime? Or are they mostly standing? And, in some cases, do we need to have tennis there where instead you could do a pickleball basketball court and it could be quite large? Because I'm not, judging by all the empty courts I see, you would have no problem walking onto a court at virtually any day of the week in any part of the city, from what I can tell, though I'm sure there have been, cases where that isn't true.
Yeah, so last night we had our Parks Commission tour, where we put our commission members on a bus, and we went to, we were at Starring that had tennis courts. Tennis was happening, volleyball was happening. We were at Riley with tennis courts, tennis was happening. Over at, as we went by Rice Marsh to look at that play structure, tennis was happening. We went by Round Lake, tennis was happening. I drive by Franlow a lot on the weekends and at nights just because I want to get a good feel of what's going on. There's specific times that people play pickleball too, and it tends to be highly coveted in the morning, not as much in the afternoon. There's a little more play starting to happen at night too. People are coming back at night, or those people that work during the day are starting to play a little bit after work. So you hear that I used to play tennis, now I play pickleball, so therefore tennis is going away. Study recently done of last year says that that is true for adults. It's not growing in the older adult range, but it's actually up 8% in kids between the ages of 16 and 17 year over year of participation in tennis. So is it a perfect science? We've certainly been right-sizing the tennis courts. We were right-sizing baseball fields because there was a time that there were so many baseball players that we rushed to build baseball fields. There were so many soccer fields that we rushed to build soccer fields. Almost luckily, lacrosse came on and is now taking up some of those. So I think where we sit right now, we are in a good spot with tennis and a good spot with basketball. I wouldn't recommend doing any less. We've kind of scaled back to where we need to. I think it's more of an issue of where and how many pickleball courts might we want to look at going forward. The other thing before we leave pickleball that I would point out too is, as we think about when we hear from Southwest Metro, it is Southwest Metro, and one of the things that hopefully will help us, hopefully when Minnetonka goes out for bid and gets those bids back, that they're good and that they can actually build them and open next year. That's not a done deal at this point. Hopefully the other ones that are planning to in other cities can get those, because we're still seeing people from all over the place come to Eden Prairie. And I think that's always going to be the case, that people will travel across borders, at least the adults will, less and less on the kids. But I think that's also why we want to make sure that we also have some of those neighborhood park opportunities for families and youth to play pickleball too, and to allow people who don't want to play a part of one group, a large group where you either play as the group plays or you're not really a part of that group. So I think there's a lot of different dynamics that are starting to emerge every month that goes by in the pickleball world.
You know, the money that Hennepin County had, was it called Mighty Ducks money or something like that?
Hennepin Youth Sports Grants.
Okay.
Yeah. So that is still
Were those
around.
small amounts of money? Was that like 10,000 here and
Well,
10,000 there?
the 10,000 is for equipment. For actually facility grants, it can be, I think they've reduced it now to the max of being $250,000. The hard part is you have to show a high use of youth. And so some of the times when we've looked at grants for other things like at the pool and community center, when it tends to mix in a lot of adults, it doesn't score very high on their application process. So I think seeing the grants that have been successful before, I have not yet seen one in the pickleball realm that we have. So Mr. Case had also mentioned cricket last time and noticed that at Flying Cloud Fields that he's seen more cricket use, and even throughout the community seen more cricket use, and that is definitely true. Several years ago, we were approached by a gentleman from Eden Prairie that was avid pickleball enthusiast, and we ended up doing a clinic with him. He has been busy in his other job the last couple years, so we took some time off from that. But again, this year we're going to be conducting a clinic with him, and we've been able to use him as a really good resource. He's also plays as an adult and has good connections in the cricket community. Cricket, just like most of the sports, all of those countries that were at one point colonized by the United Kingdom and the Queen and the Kings, they really learned the sport of cricket. And so one of those countries, though, India, which we have some fairly recent immigrants from, cricket is very popular with that culture as well. But what we've seen even in our past opportunities for some of the classes is it is something that's interesting to people of all kind of cultures and origins too. So it isn't just the Indian population that is migrated here that's playing cricket. It is big across the United States. If I think back to when lacrosse started to pop up, it has a feel similar to that. I don't know that, at least in Eden Prairie for a while, that it will get big enough to be like lacrosse is. And I think that's significant because our past models here in our city, as well as many around us, is until you're big enough, you don't really count. Until all of our policies, and we haven't really reviewed them with you for a while, but quite a few years ago, it was unless you're 80%, 70 if you're a figure skating organization or a swim organization, but unless you're 80% Eden Prairie residents, you don't get use of our fields. And that still stands today as policy. I will tell you that we've been somewhat working with that policy, especially as we've worked with cricket. And what we are trying to do is help nurture and incubate them. Instead of having them chased off from fields, we're trying to help them figure out where can they use fields. And it isn't as highly scheduled as some of our athletic associations are, but we have that relationship with them and contact with them now where we can tell them, here are the nights at Flying Cloud where you're not going to see baseball there, so you don't have to worry that you're in conflict with them. And so they're able to go there and use those fields. Eden Lake Elementary, Eden Lake Park, as you drive by there on the weekends sometimes, you'll see cricket there. Great big open green space that they can use. There's a couple misnomers in cricket though. One is that it has to be this huge field. And at the highest levels, that's true, and you see that depicted here. But if you're at the 4th of July and you walk by the cricket tent, that's something that we worked with Masood, if any of you met him there, to help promote the sport of cricket. And it goes anywhere from being played indoors with a tennis ball or a wiffle ball, all the way up to the highest level with a hard bat and a hard ball. They're also able to create a field really quickly. And so that's what Councilmember Case has seen up at Flying Cloud Fields, is they overlay themselves really easily onto a baseball field and are able to have a really good cricket match at that point in time. So a couple things that we're doing. We're trying to facilitate the groups that are out there so that they can self-organize and can play. Maybe at some point they do get to the state where they are more organized in a nonprofit, an athletic association. But we know if we keep pushing them aside, that'll be harder for them to do and to get that kind of critical momentum going. And then we're also working with some of the local knowledgeable cricket organizers to be able to put on some camps and clinics. And we've got one coming up this fall that we're hoping to make go, and more of a youth and kids kind of clinic. So with that, I'd certainly answer any other questions that you might have.
Councilmember Case.
I know people are watching the time. I'll try to make this fast as well. I just, the reason that this all came together as a request was that I think and I think all of us are seeing demographic use of our facilities demographic changes that are changing the use of our facilities, our various fields. And I just felt like, are we keeping up with what's happening? And we invest in anything. I understand we don't have $500,000 for the pickleball courts right now. I would argue we never had enough of anything when we built our baseball fields and our hockey rinks and our swimming pools, and we needed participation. Money is always it's kind of zero sum, and it's always difficult to come by. I want us to look at, and nothing you've said has changed my mind on this. Even though it was very meaningful, and thank you, and I appreciate the background, the information. I want us to look at a plan that might be a 3-year plan to get 12 courts at Starring Lake, and tell us how to get there. And maybe there's a bonding mechanism. Maybe there is participation that we can nail down somehow with the pickleball club. Maybe, I'm not sure about this, but I feel like when the baseball groups run their huge tournaments up at Miller, do we collect fees off of that? I don't know, but I'm just saying that maybe there's a mechanism that we can think outside the box. But I think it's time to change our strategy from 1 court here, 2 courts there, and slowly over 10 years to no. I think we need to build up quickly to 10 to 12 courts, because everything that I've heard from talking to pickleball proponents is that there's synergy and community relationship when you get all the courts in one spot. I don't think it'll work. I understand your thought about, everything's down south of Pioneer Trail. I think that's working for right now. Now, maybe in 10 years, as we age as a community, we really do need 2 more courts up north and 2 over here, and we'll look at that, and we'll go in and shift, and we won't be here, none of us on the council. Hopefully we'll be on Earth. But nonetheless, that's for then. But I feel like we're missing something right now. And I'd love to have some, and I guess, Rick, I'm asking, and other council members can weigh in. I'd like to see us come back with some proposal options. Maybe it truly doesn't work. We just do not have the money. But it just feels like with a capital improvement plan that's a 10-year out, there's a way to shift here, do this, bond here, do something that we can sooner rather than later build. And I don't know, 12 is a magic cool number, but I know I've heard, you're going to cringe now, but I've heard 10 thrown around. Maybe there's some possibilities and options that if we had to keep the 4 at Franlow, and we build 10 at Starring Lake, and maybe as we rebuild up at the little park you talked about, we do 2 there. I don't know, but I want something coming back that will give us some sense that there's a way to do this. If there absolutely isn't, then we have to decide raise taxes for it, and we probably won't then. But I'd like to know what the alternatives are.
Councilmember Nelson.
I sort of agree about that. I've been hearing about pickleball for at least 8 years, and some of the problems playing with it, and people getting more and more into it, and it becoming something that, yes, it's a group of more apt to be senior adults, but it's coming to other groups too. You don't have to be quite as athletic to play pickleball as you do to play tennis. And so this isn't new. The demand isn't new. It's growing, and I think it's going to keep growing. So I agree that we need to look at a big facility. We've done it for other groups. We really haven't done as much for, the 50-plus groups as we have for the kids or the younger, people who want to play in their 20s and 30s and 40s. And I think we have to start including that into our overall finance plan. Not that I don't want to have, kids stuff at every park where it should be, because that's the absolute you need. But I do think we need to revamp and look at how to get this now, and how to keep looking at the fact that people over 50 probably really need physical activities that they can do.
Councilmember Aho.
Well, one of the things that we had a discussion at our workshop was building community and improving our building of community. And I think this seems to me that it's a good match for building community, not only for our senior population here, but I think as the sport develops, I think more younger people will get involved as well. I've got to believe that will happen. And so I think it is a good community building sport. And so I think, having a larger court at one area, I think really does make a lot of sense. And so from that perspective, especially, I think we really ought to look at how we can accommodate this. And I think, as we've done with other sports, like you mentioned in your talk, you said, look, for baseball, they came forward for the Miracle Field. The Baseball Association also came forward when we did the stadium. We've had the Hockey Association come through when we did the third sheet of ice. We had the pool. The swimmers come forward with the pool money. Maybe we can help them to just to be a catalyst in raising some of that funds to help out with the cost associated with it. Maybe they themselves, being probably a lot of them are on fixed incomes, don't have the money to donate themselves. But who knows? Maybe there's a couple people out there. Maybe there's people like United Health Group that are focused on healthy individuals that would be willing to step up and give some money. And I think if we as a city act as a catalyst to help them to see who they might draw on for those funds, I think that might be a good public-private partnership that we could get some naming rights for someone that would really benefit from that.
Councilmember Wickstrom.
Yeah, I really appreciate Councilmember Case bringing this up and having us take a look at it, because it's been out there bubbling for a long time. So I think you're hearing all of us say really the same thing, and that is, how can we get it done? And there could be a variety of ways to do that, maybe some that we do some funding and then seek funding from other places. But even building the 10 or 12 pickleball courts at Starring, who knows, what will happen in 10 years. It could change. We always need to stay in flux and always responding to the change in our city in terms of who's using what resources. So I would like to turn pretty quickly on this one as well.
It's all about being relevant, right? I talk to people in the business community and they say, your business has to be relevant constantly, and your relevance changes. As the needs, as the desires change, you have to be relevant. And so I think we as a city need to be relevant. And to me, this seems like an issue of relevance.
Yeah, so maybe to kind of summarize and wrap up, I think what Mr. Case initially said is Jay and I could certainly sit down and with our finance manager, and we've had projects that have moved up and moved back in the CIP and moved around, and additional funding has been found, and projects have been moved around. It's a 10-year plan. It's updated every 2 years, but depending on the council need and desire, it can be updated within the year. So we'll bring something back.
Great. That's all I'm asking for. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lockhammer.
You're welcome.
One final report from our Public Works Director, Mr. Ellis.
He's
Make it snappy.
He's always waiting.
The City of Eden Prairie has had for a number of years in our capital improvement program a project to build a new ground storage reservoir. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, as I was saying, we have a project in our capital improvement program to build a ground storage reservoir, and maybe just a brief overview of how our water system works. We really have four components. You have the well field that brings the water up out of the aquifer. We have our water treatment plant. We have our satellite storage facilities, and then you have your distribution mains that feed it to the customers. So when you do a quick analysis of where our system is today, how it's performing, we find that our distribution mains and our water treatment plant well positioned for future capacity, future growth. No improvements are needed there. Our well field also in a good position. We have the need to add maybe 2 to 4 wells over the next 10 to 15 years. But we do have an immediate need to expand our storage capacity, and that's due primarily to summer irrigation. And ground storage reservoir is what we have in our capital improvement program, and they function much like the elevated storage reservoirs that we have, town center, hidden ponds. We have one over behind Lifetime Fitness at Baker and 494. That one you don't see as much. This would be the next addition and the final addition to our water storage reservoir needs. And I've given a couple of examples of what a ground storage reservoir looks like. They can be decorated. You can have some aesthetic improvements to it. I think the one that you see on the lower corner is actually one that I believe is in Shakopee on Marshall Farm Road. And then they can be rather bland where there are no aesthetic treatments like you see at the one to the top. So we have the ability to make these look as nice or as plain as we would like. I think going into this project and the way we've budgeted, we have put in some funding to make it look pleasant and fit nice within the neighborhood. So what's really driving, what's the purpose and need behind this project? What's driving it? When you take a look at our summer demand, it's irrigation. There are a few times that we've experienced in the past when we go off of a week of very dry conditions, very hot conditions, that our Hidden Ponds water tower begins to lose pressure and almost empties. Hidden Ponds is the water tower that's over off Dell Road, and so we know that there's an improvement needed there. We've done our hydraulic modeling to figure out how big of a storage reservoir do we need and generally what location do we need to have it. That model shows that there's a need for 3 to 5 million gallons of storage, and that would be accompanied with a pumping station, by the way. And that would provide capacity for the future. Now, one thing I will point out is that we have seen a decrease in our water usage through conservation efforts, through modern appliances that are more water efficient, and I think just changing habits on how water is used. When we did that first hydraulic model, we were using what we were seeing at the time was 120, 130 gallons per capita per day, and that was saying you need 5 million gallons of storage. When you take a look at the last couple of years, we've actually seen that drop to 75 gallons per capita per day. What that means is maybe we can get away with only 2.5 million gallons. That's going to save millions of dollars. So there is an economic benefit to water conservation as well. We've seen that trend. Essentially, it's been a straight line drop over time, water per usage per capita per day. So I think there's a good reliability in the fact that we can reduce the size of that ground storage reservoir and get by for a number of years. We also need the ground storage reservoir for future capacity. We know we're going to add residents. We know that's going to be demand. We know we have a robust business community, and we expect that to grow as well. So we also need it not just for today's needs, but future growth. And then finally, wear and tear on our system. When when there's times of the year when all of your pumps are going at full capacity, pressure's going up, pressure's going down, and there's a lot of wear and tear on the system. It creates a lot of extra maintenance. You have to replace parts earlier. If you have redundancies built into the system, you can actually prolong the life of a lot of our equipment. And then finally, I guess, fire protection. This is also something that's needed to ensure that we meet all of our fire protection, pressure and flow for the entire community. Again, it was budgeted in the CIP, $9.1 million. Siting criteria. So where exactly can we build a system that works? I think the number one thing we need to look at is hydraulic performance. You can't site these things anywhere. This storage reservoir needs to be central to the west part of Eden Prairie. Some of the other things that we look at are constructability. You can't build these things in wetlands. It has to be property that's, has some value to it. You can't find some obscure place where nobody else can build anything. This is a large structure. It needs supporting structures. It's got a very large foundation. Other things, we want to make sure we're not displacing businesses or homes that exist already. We don't want to impact our tax base. We've got to find places where these fit within the context of the neighborhood that they're located. And then number of other things like security, access. Can we expand this in the future if we do need to go to 5 million gallons 20 years down the road? So a number of criteria went into the siting of this potential reservoir. When we take a look at it, this map might be somewhat difficult to read, but we tried targeting property that we already own. A lot of these are parks, senior center, the water treatment plant site. We actually had about, 12 different sites, and then a number of them were kind of MnDOT property that were very near to one another. So we took a look at all the candidate locations. We ran them through the criteria selection, and the one that seemed to meet most of the criteria the greatest was MnDOT property that's located north of Highway 212, is also east of Eden Prairie Road and south of the regional trail. And it's the area that's highlighted on the map in blue. We approached MnDOT about their willingness to sell that property. They actually did an appraisal. We received it last Friday. They are willing. The price is very attractive. It's $1 a square foot, so $260,000 is the cost of the parcel. Doesn't displace any existing businesses or homes. Doesn't impact tax base because it's MnDOT property. It's located adjacent to a large diameter water main, which is a must. You have to be able to fill this tower quickly, and you need to be able to get the water out in the system. It really met all of the criteria that we were looking at. So it is the preferred location, and we'd like to, at some point in the next few months, bring forward a purchase agreement to acquire this site from MnDOT. One other thing that's rather interesting about this property, and Kathy Case was very helpful in helping me understand what was the historical usage of the area around this potential site. Turns out this is where the old train station was, the Washburn Depot that served the area. I think the Miller store was actually just down the road. So this was the location of a train depot. And that may be beneficial because with this storage reservoir comes the need to build a pump station that would actually need a structure around it the size of a small house or the size of a small train depot. So there could be the opportunity to house the pump station in a building that mimics the old Washburn rail station. And then also this was the water stop at the station. So as the steam locomotives came in, they would fill their tender, they would fill their engine with water so they could get 100 miles down the road to the next station. So there might also be an opportunity to recreate that water stop. The regional trail is located right adjacent to this, so there could be an opportunity just to remind people of what the original use of this property was and how that mimics how it's planned to be used with the future water storage reservoir. So there could be an opportunity here. More to come on that. With that, maybe the last thing I want to touch on, timeline. We're looking to purchase the property in 2017. We'd begin design of the facility 2017 through 2018, construction following 19 and 20. So with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions?
I do.
Yes.
How large of a facility would you anticipate? So if you're talking 3 to 5 million gallons of water, how big does that need to be? And what is the height that you would say that would be?
It really depends. Of course, the larger the diameter, the shorter the height.
Right.
I would imagine this is going to be in the neighborhood of 20 to 25 feet tall. And the width, I'm not sure exactly what that width would be to make that work. But when I've kind of modeled it out on the site, how tall could we go, how wide could we go with the land that we have available, meeting setbacks, including room for a pump station, and then also the possibility of creating another 2.5 million gallons in the future. It fits on that site at about 20 to 25 feet in height. One thing to keep in mind too, if I can just add, berming, burying the tank, landscaping are all things that can be done on this site. If you want to minimize the footprint of what you see above grade, you can bury. In fact, we have a buried tank on our water treatment plant site that unless you're driving by, you have no idea it's there. It does get expensive. You're moving a lot of dirt around. You're adding more structural support to the facility to account for that loading of the soil, but it can be done.
There's really not too many sight lines that would be blocked by the construction of that if it was at 20 to 25 feet that I can think of. Is that your estimation?
You know, what I was thinking, I was actually just out there again this afternoon. If you were to bury maybe 5 to 10 feet of the tank, take that dirt that you're removing to bury it, build a berm, and you do landscaping on top of the berm, I think there's a good chance you might not be able to see it from Highway 212.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing we could do is use it as an opportunity for a monument sign, right?
That crossed my mind as well.
True. All right, thank you for the presentation. Oh, Councilmember Nelson, you have a question.
Oh, one quick thing, if it is that close to the trail and such, if we build it there, we need to have some kind of public water fountain so all the people using the trail can have a water stop.
Yeah, so I have made an initial reach out to Three Rivers Park District to ask if they have a need for a shelter, kiosk, information booth, drinking, fix-it stations. They're taking a look at that. I'm not sure what their position will be ultimately, but I've offered that this would be a great opportunity for us to partner on a project. They've hinted at legacy funds. This would be an ideal candidate for state legacy funds, bringing in that historical context of the project. So.
Love that idea.
Great.
Very
Thank
creative.
you. Thank you. Anything else to bring before the council? Is there a motion for adjournment?
Move to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.